like to quickly talk about some upcoming products. The next release will be our second generation MIMO. Now what this is, a lot of the stuff's the same, like the main radio parameters and stuff are the same. We did bump up the throughput to 190 megs, but the main changes we're doing here are we're adding some pre-processing control boards to it. And what this is going to allow us to do is to add in some other features. It's going to allow us to run our packets per second count, which is 35 or 50, depending on the model. This is going to push it up to about 90,000 packets per second, maybe even more. But 90 was just a prelim number I'm running with. But it looks like it may be a little bit more. But 90,000 packets per second over a 5 gigahertz link is a really, kind of a big deal in terms of throughput, especially if you're backhauling a ton of VoIP stuff. We're going to add in some different sort of packet aggregation that we're doing. Basically doubling up what we're able to currently run. We're going to add in full QoS support, so COS, TOS, DSCP, and all that sort of fun stuff. That'll all be able to be added to this. It'll also be able to give us the ability to run all sorts of different bandwidth controls. So, hard setting which limit you want to run on one or the other, doing some VLAN bandwidth controls and stuff like that. And it also allows us to run some different data compression. So the actual raw wireless part of it's going to stay the same, but with all this pre-processing and stuff like that, we're able to really squeeze a ton more performance out of what we've been able to do so far. So we're pretty excited about that. We expect this probably the first quarter of next year, sometime during the first quarter. I'm not going to make any hard quotes on time because I always get beat up when I do that. So I'm just going to STFU right now. Here's a really exciting product. This is our third generation point-to-point. And what this is a MIMO platform, but it's actually built on a proprietary WiMAX core. And what we've done is we've taken a lot of the cool WiMAX stuff and left it in there, but stripped out a lot of the junk that people get frustrated with, provisioning, all sorts of stuff like that. It's basically gutted. We kept all the core stuff that everyone really likes. So the first releases will be 2.3 to 2.7 gig, so the wideband 2 gigahertz, 3 gigahertz, and the big one will be 5 gigahertz. One, we'll see the most use of in the U.S. at least. It will have the option for point-to-point will be the primary usage role, but it'll also support point-to-few point, and this is a 1 to 3. So basically what that means is if you want to install 3 separate links and they're all basically in the same direction, then as long as you make the antennas work out, you can run 1 master and 3 slaves to this. And you'll split the bandwidth across, all 3 of those. But in areas where you need a handful of 20 meg links or 30 meg links or something like that, and they're all shooting back to the same point, this allows you to do it with 4 radios instead of 6. So nice savings of money, management, stuff like that. Now, what I think is the most important part of this whole little demonstration or discussion about this product is you'll notice that it's running 90 megabits per second in the 10 megahertz channel. Actually, it's pushing a little bit closer to 100 in the lab right now. So the distance tests and stuff are working out really well too. So to me, that's a really important sort of thing to notice. You're pulling that kind of bandwidth in the 10 megs channel, it's incredibly spectrally efficient. And especially as the 5 gig band is getting thrashed out in so many places, you're trying to do so much on the 5 gig band, then this is really important for your planning and stuff, being able to stack things up like that. Yeah, and it's running a 256 QAM, and versus 64 QAM in our current MIMO products and stuff, this high speed by running 256 QAM is what's really allowing us to push this through. So a couple of different channel sizes. 10 meg will be the max. We're not running any larger than that just because of the speeds that we are getting are so good, and there's no real reason to run bigger. And this gives us the ability to stack things a lot deeper than consuming the entire band like you would in a 40 megahertz channel or something like that. 100,000 packets per second, 70 miles distance. They'll have full QoS support, bandwidth control, automatic transmit power, and receive gain control, which is pretty nifty. Different frame configs, blah, blah, blah. Here's a really sexy part, too. It's going to have over-the-air and GPS sync. So if it's all same system or where everyone can see each other well, it'll run over-the-air synchronization, or you can GPS sync by adding an antenna to it. You'll be able to co-locate a bunch of them at the same time, and the lab guys are swearing up and down that it's going to support sync with current Motorola Canopy and point-to-point systems. So They swear up and down it's going to work, and when we get that worked out, it's going to be really big for co-locating with lots of other different equipment and, sort of snugging up next to your big iron that you've already got in place with some of the ortho stuff you may have or existing 5 gig distributions. Being able to sync all those together is going to give us a lot of abilities to make everyone play and happy in the same sandbox. All right, so that's the products. That's the really fun part. We'll talk about our management system now, which is called WNMS. So there's several different components of the system. You can see a little graphical layout. But basically how it works is you've got the reporting agents run on the devices themselves. They report back to the data collectors, which you can run all together on one system. Or if you have different networks, you want to spread out the load, you can run separate collectors on each network. They all talk back to a centralized MySQL database, handles everything together, and then you've got the monitor daemon and the mail sending utilities, that's a different chunk, and then the web management where you can actually log in, take a look at things. So all these places sort of play together. They're all segregated, but they all work together to perform the common goals. And if you look at this very snazzy looking drawing that I definitely didn't do because it looks good, you can see, we'll start at the top, like it's your stuff your typical data management system will do. So it'll run stats, give you reports on, throughputs, errors, so on and so forth. You can do inventory control, so you can log all your serial numbers tied to locations and everything, which is really handy and gives you the ability to make yourself a little bit less paperwork spread out. There's all sorts of alerts that can run with monitoring, so you can assign different alert priorities or monitoring levels or, run it just on the backhauls and APs and not, the end devices or whatever. You can run configuration from the management system and maintenance. So if you want to push a new config out to a bunch of devices or do firmware updates or something like that, you can do it. It has the intelligent device discovery and provisioning. And basically you pop a unit, as soon as it starts talking on, it'll pull up in the system. You can provision it directly from it. Helps roll out installs quicker. Yeah, and you also have the visualization on Google Maps. So it'll give you a Google Map layout, and you can drill down and look at everything. It'll do the alert statuses and everything there. So it gives you the ability to get like a bird's eye sort of view on where the network runs. And the cool thing about all of this is that it is free. We like free. Well, you like free. We like paying, but, we're feeling generous. But this whole system is free. You can actually download it right now from the LigoWave website. Go to the LigoWave website, go to Applications. You'll find the quick install guide. It'll walk you through how to do a Linux install, Windows install, so on and so forth. So all that right there on the website. Also speaking of free is our LinkCalc application. LinkCalc's a pretty nifty little tool that we developed because, we deal a lot with people looking to run calcs that aren't necessarily experienced in doing it. And there's a lot of free tools that are out there, but for the newbie, it's a little bit of a learning process to get that going. There's pay tools out there, but a lot of it is extremely expensive. So we're like, hey, let's develop a point-to-point calculator people can use. Mainly it was developed for internal use and for distributors and stuff to use to make their lives easier. But ever since we launched it, this thing has become hugely popular. And we run, thousands of links a week on this, both our stuff and other people's stuff. And it's been a really, really nifty little tool. I use it for myself all the time, just to do sanity checks or detail, just depending on, what I'm looking to do. So you just go to LigoWave.com/LinkCalc, sign up for an account. Once you do, you'll see this screen. And you'll see, basically, you got your name fields, so, whatever you want to call the sites. On both sides, you've got the ability to set the radio type. So if you're using our P2P3 or you want to use the 620S 11 gig, you punch that in. It'll automatically populate things like transmit power, receive gain, or receive sensitivity, stuff like that, which is really handy. If you want, you also have the ability to run a custom setup. So you want to put on your own radio specs, and that's fine too. Punch in your latitude and your longitude, the height of your antenna, and of course that's AGL or above ground height. Go down, you'll see the frequency, polarization, any extra cable losses, that's all self-explanatory. Site climate, it doesn't do so much right now, just ignore that for now. Units, English or metric, or ITU. Now, IT ran rate is an incredibly important field because it's what tells you what your link availability is going to be on your high throughput links above 10 gig. Now, you got to remember that 10 gigahertz and above is where your rain really starts coming into play. The water droplets in the air attenuates the signals really heavily at those higher frequencies. The higher you go, the more attenuation you get. You hit the little icon beside it, and it'll give you a breakdown of all the different modulation rates and the percentage uptime for all of those and what your fade margin is. So when you look at that calculation, you'll see, hey, you know, I see at 256 QAM, my rate might be 99.95. You're like, well, that's okay, but not super. But you drop down to 128 QAM or 64 QAM, and 64 QAM might be 4 nines. QPSK might be 5 nines or something like that. So all these different percentages, you know, like how well that link's going to run. And let's say you're getting, you know, you ran it with 2-foot antennas. You're like, well, that kind of stinks. I want better reliability. So you go back in, calculate with 4-foot antennas, and once you're done with that, you'll see that your 99.95 is now 99993 or something. You're like, hey, 4 nines, I'm happy with that. So this is all incredibly important when you're planning out your license link stuff and your 24 gig especially, that you look and see what your percentage uptimes are going to be. And just because you see 5 nines at QPSK, you got to know that, well, you'll always run at this level, and I know I can turn it up, and this is how you base your ACM rates and stuff like that. So it's all incredibly important. So that's my harping lesson for today. Now, getting back to the link calc, you'll see on the top right-hand corner, there's some things that makes using this calculator a little easier. There's a part where you can download the report, and it saves as a PDF. It's got all this information. And it also, and you see that middle tab at the top is for maps. It does a Google Map outlay, which is a good sanity check to make sure you didn't flip a sign in your coordinates and run a link in South America instead of North America, and so on and so forth. I always like to double check that and make sure I'm on the right side of the world. You can save this link to your account, so you can see all these links that you saved up at the top, and you can do a share this link. This is a tool I use a lot where if a customer's like, hey, I ran this, I don't know what it means, so I'm like, well, you know, do the share link, send me that link, and when they email me the link, I can pull it up, and it will come up. I can see exactly all their stuff, their exact link, and then play with it and give suggestions or, you know, interpret it or what it means. On the actual map itself, the things you want to be mindful of all the green stuff's dirt, so you'll want to avoid that. If the yellow line is shooting in the dirt, the link's just not going to work because this stuff doesn't play in the dirt well. You've got your purple line, which is your first Fresnel zone, and then your little blue line just above that, which is your 60% of your first Fresnel zone. Basically what that means, like in this link, I've got a visual line of sight between the 2 points. That looks good, but I've got some hill or some dirt that's mixed up in the first 60%. If it's in the first 60%, odds are you might be able to get it to link, but it's just not going to run well at all. You got too much stuff in the way. If the 60% is clean, and then it's just some in the first phenol, then odds are it's going to run okay, but it's not going to run nearly what it could in full bore. So, like in a case like this example, you would definitely want to look up at, you know, getting one or both sides of your link higher, and that's something you can play with. Is go back to parameters, you know, add 50 feet on both sides, run a link, and then see what it's going to do. That's all this stuff. You can get a copy from LigoWave or off the thing. So all my explanations, and that's the pretty much end of my spiel. So I guess now we're going to move to some QA stuff. So Richard, if you want to